Hello everybody and welcome back to the FPL Phillips YouTube channel, and the big topic of the week in FPL, and I think the one that there's going to be the most discussion around, are the midfield options, and in particular that price range of 5 million up to around 7.5 million, depending on if you've got any money in the bank to get in an Nkunku replacement, or maybe even someone like a Jacob Murphy, who's looking a bit rubbish at the moment and is still sat in my team, guilty. But yeah, we're going to be looking at the replacements in that price range, having a deep dive into some of my top picks, and then giving you my overall final rankings at the end. Before we get into this one, there was a lot of support on the last video, so I wanted to first of all thank you guys so much for that. But the likes were a bit stinky, so leave a thumbs up on this one if you do enjoy it. Before we get into it, then that would be much appreciated if you're willing to invest your like already. But I think the most popular option that I've seen a lot of people already make the move to is Morgan Rogers of Aston Villa, and the appeal of that 5 million price tag does just seem to be too much. I think a lot of people will have watched that Arsenal against Aston Villa game in Game Week 2, and he looked fantastic there, set up a few chances. Watkins definitely should have finished one that would have been a Rogers assist. So on another day, he comes away with more points, and 2 blanks at the moment is maybe something that would, in previous years, make him go more under the radar with only 4 points over the first 2 game weeks. But since there's a lot more coverage now, a lot more people making FPL content, he is becoming a bit more of a popular one, at least, you know, over on Twitter and places like that. But he won't be as popular in a casual sense, and he's still only at 8% ownership, despite some managers starting the season with him as well. So Villa have fantastic fixtures over the next 4. I think that's going to be the big appeal, and they actually rank first in fixture difficulty over those 4 fixtures. His data so far hasn't been the best, I will admit, but yeah, as we talked about, he should have had at least 1 assist in that game last time out. His predicted points don't look too bad either. He's getting some shots in, as you can see from the shot map. So he's had 5 shots already, not from too bad positions, getting 1 on target. So yeah, it's a good pick. He saves a lot of money as well, which is a key thing if we're looking to move towards a 2 or 3 premium system in attack, trying to find those funds to get in someone like a Salah alongside your Haaland, or Haaland alongside your Salah, or maybe even add in a Saka, a Palmer, a Heung-min Son even into your midfield. The big hitters and the big price tags are going ham on these early game weeks, and it does look like we may be moving towards a strategy where we can invest in some of these cheaper mids and then go with 1 or 2 premiums in the midfield, maybe as well as Erling Haaland up front, or could even be a 3 premium midfield with no Haaland. So there's a lot of variety for strategy, but overall finding funds at the moment is going to be a key thing. That's why I really like Morgan Rogers. He's only 5 million, but there is another man who we'll see later on who could rival him at the exact same price tag. And next up, we're going to discuss about Emil Smith-Rowe, a man who's already in my team that I started Game Week 1 with and has already had a price rise up to 5.6 million, so that is worth considering. But he's been looking very, very impressive early on. Some people were a bit confused about his minutes, whether or not he was going to be a minutes risk, but he seemed okay for that so far. And Fulham have 4 very nice fixtures coming up next as well. They're ranked 6th, actually, for fixture difficulty in that time, so not all the way at the top, and they have a tricky fixture against Man City in Game Week 7. But that game week in general is one where it's very difficult to find promising fixture to target there. They played Manchester United in Game Week 1, which is something worth considering when you're looking at expected goals and all that for Smith-Rowe, and he did come up off early in that one. But in Game Week 2, he looked much more impressive, and he's got those games, as I mentioned, against Ipswich up next, which is going to be a big key one. He's predicted 10.2 points over the next 3 game weeks, so pretty comparable to Morgan Rogers, really. And I think that's why some people are opting just to go for the Villa man, is he is that 0.6 million cheaper. If you go for someone who's gone up by 0.1 million, then you could be pricing yourself out of other options as well. It's a bit tricky when it comes to the start of the year in FPL with players that have gone up by 0.1. It can often leave you with just a tiny amount away from making your desired moves a game week or 2 down the line. But overall, I think Smith-Rowe is an equally good option to go for. I think if you've got the money and you're less worried about funds and that 0.6 million isn't going to make the difference really, then Smith-Rowe could easily be the man for you if you want to invest in an Nkunku replacement. But Smith-Rowe isn't the only option who started the season priced at 5.5 million. Minte at Brighton is one that I do still really like the look of. And I think something that you'll see this week is not much discussion around the Brighton mids due to that fixture in Game Week 3 that they've got against Arsenal. Away from home, it's going to be a very tricky one, granted, and a lot of people have several fires in their teams to put out at the moment. They need this option as the Nkunku replacement to field in their 11, so they're putting less thought and less consideration towards the Brighton midfielders, and that's an equally valid thing to do. There are other teams like West Ham who have tricky fixtures this week, but other promising midfield options, but people aren't really looking at as much as the teams that have a good fixture and a capable fixture in game week 3. Now there's always a possibility that Brighton go and grab a goal at the Emirates, maybe even 2. Arsenal have kept 2 clean sheets so far this season, however, they have conceded chances. I think David Raya's been responsible for keeping pretty much both those clean sheets intact for the large majority. He is a quality keeper, and I don't think his form's going to let up at home, but I think on another day, Watkins with a better finish, we've already discussed this, he could have had a goal there, and I think on another day, you're not seeing a clean sheet for Arsenal, and they have been known to concede goals at home in kind of sloppy settings, maybe even an early goal, and I wouldn't write Brighton off, and I wouldn't not go for them just because of that fixture in game week 3. They've got Ipswich at home game week 4, Forest is a pretty decent fixture as well. They've got some defences like Chelsea and Newcastle in the next 6 as well, who have not been impressive at the start of this season and could easily be a green fixture on the fixture ticker if you wanted to. Now, the main thing with Minte at the moment is that he got that concussion substitution in game week 1. Game week 2, we saw his minutes limited as well. It's a 67-minute average per game for him so far. And they've got a Adingra on the bench at Brighton who they're going to want to see minutes. And I think for that reason, him and Adingra, Minte are a little bit more up in the air when it comes to getting someone in who's going to look to get more towards that 90-minute mark. We've seen in the expected FPL points per 90 as well, him being outscored by his counterpart on the other wing, Mitoma on 6.57 compared to Minte's 4.5. And the XG is where a large amount of that is coming from. Minte's got some decent assist threat, as you can see in there, but with midfielders in particular, goals count more than assists due to that 2-point difference. 5 points for the goal, 3 points for the assist. If you can find a goal-scoring mid for a cheap price, then you really have found some FPL gold. Despite that, there's not too much difference between the expected points over the next 3 game weeks between the two, with Mitoma on 11.6 and Minte on 10.6. But yeah, I think these two are options maybe for those who can wait an extra week. You could even bench Nkunku, kind of take the hit, have that extra week of information, which could be very valuable at the start of the season, and then make your decision based on that. That's what my plan is with Jacob Murphy. I'll take Nkunku out this week, but I'm benching Murphy. I've already taken the price drop. I've got some money in the bank. I'll assess these options that we're going over in today's video, and then I'll make my decision on that for next game week, the option that I want to bring in. Because we've only had 2 game weeks so far, we're going to gain another 50% of information. We're going to have that extra bit, which is quite a lot at the start of the season, to go on for game week 4. So I think that's very valuable. I think keep an eye on these two. Maybe not options if you're desperate for someone to start this week, but I do like the look of the Brighton boys. Now, if you're looking for an option for someone to definitely start this week, then Bryan Mbeumo might be the pick for you. Brentford have had a tough game in game week 2. They've got that out of the way against Liverpool. They've now got Southampton at home. I think the conflict of interest with Brentford is that he's got a difficult fixture then in game week 4 away at Man City, where you're maybe not going to expect Brentford to get much there. Having said that, we've seen Ipswich already go to the Etihad and score, so you can't write him off fully, but on paper, it's not the easiest set of fixtures from game week 4 through to game week 8 there. Despite that, the Fantasy Football fixture ticker actually has Brentford second over the next 6 for attacking fixture difficulty, which is very interesting. You know, we have seen Tottenham at points last season not perform very well defensively, same with West Ham and Wolves, although I think West Ham have improved a fair bit so far from what I've seen at the start of this season. But what you're getting with Mbeumo, more importantly, is a 90-minute man, the talisman of Brentford, who's going to be on penalties and has some decent XG threat and expected assist threat as well. So I think he's going to be relied upon a lot. He is the man that they'll go to for their goals. Granted, he's going to cost you 7 million instead of maybe 5.5 or 6.5, but I think he's a good investment. And I think the time a lot of people are looking at jumping on Mbeumo is around game week 6, and the fixtures that you can't see that go further on are very promising for Brentford there too. So I think he's a good option that you can get in early, especially if you're not keen on playing the wild card around that game week 6 mark and you just like to get ahead of the curve on a player, then I think Mbeumo could definitely be that option for you if you've got the funds to go there. And the same can be said, really, with 90-minute man on penalties for Morgan Gibbs-White at Nottingham Forest, who've been one of the teams I've been rather impressed with at the start of this season, not only offensively but defensively as well. They've looked pretty good. Granted, they've had a nice fixture run at the start of the season, and they've got some more challenging games coming up in Game Week 4, say, where they go to Anfield. But I still think that Gibbs White will be a good option. We've seen him be ever consistent over the last few FPL seasons, really. He is that 90-minute man. He'll be on the penalties for them. Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, who people were looking at the start of the season, haven't really wowed me early on. Chris Wood up front's going to be a little bit of a minutes risk. You could go with a 4.5 mil defender from Nottingham Forest, but if you're looking for an attacking option, then I think Morgan Gibbs-White is the pick for you. An expected FPL points per 90 so far of 6.0, which is pretty impressive indeed. XG and XA is all there. His expected points over the next 3, despite having that Liverpool fixture, are up there with some of the more impressive in this selection. And as we said, he's always going to have that chance of getting a penalty. And he just looks very good from open play as well. I think he's one of those ones that maybe doesn't have the massive upside that you'll see from some other midfielders, and he maybe is seen a bit more of a boring pick. But sometimes those boring picks that tick over, just grab that 1 or maybe even 2 returns per game week, and just are ever more consistent than perhaps some of the more volatile options. I think that those can be the play sometimes. And yeah, it might not be the most interesting or spicy pick, but if you're looking for a good rank and you're looking for someone who will be consistent, then Gibbs White, I think, is probably the player for you. If you can bench him in Game Week 4, then that's even more ideal. It's a similar situation with Brian and Boomer, where they're good options if you've got the coverage on the bench for the moment, and you're looking at Game Week 3 as a fixture where you need to attack and get someone into your starting 11, but then you've maybe got the coverage from someone else whose fixture improves in Game Week 4. João Pedro would be a perfect example of that. If you're looking for someone who you take Nkunku out for Gibbs White, say, you start him this week, and then you could maybe bench Gibbs White or Mbeumo, whichever it is, in Game Week 4, and start João Pedro for that week, then that looks like a good opportunity for one of these two options who have a very similar profile at the moment, very similar things going in their favour. I think one of these two could be the one for you, depending on the funds you've got, maybe. So, here are your rankings for the Nkunku replacement, sorted by expected FPL points per 90. And we've looked in depth at the bottom 7 options on this list, but the top 3 are all ones we did not look at, and extra ones that I wanted to leave to the end of this video to make sure you consider as well. Luis Diaz, Semenyo and Selçuk are the ones for people just listening. But expected FPL points per 90 go in favour of the Liverpool man at the top, 10.94 per 90, all the way down to Rodgers, who's got the least impressive data on paper, 3.91 expected FPL points per 90. And Thomas Selçuk is the one who we kind of alluded to earliest in the first section of the video, where I said that there's another player at that 5 mil price point who you could go for. Now, he's in the same boat as the Brighton men, really, where you've got a tough fixture in Game Week 3. This time for West Ham is against Man City. And so if you could have him and just maybe jump on him next week, or bring him in and then bench him if you wanted to, then that could be the play for you. He's another one where you could wait on and bring in next week if you don't really like the look of Rodgers, or you just want to give yourself that extra bit of time to assess over one more game week and then make your call then. So Thomas Selçuk getting forward a lot more than we've seen last season, and is looking a bit more like the player we saw 2 or 3 seasons ago in West Ham, and it is what he is really good at, getting into the box, using his size, using his strength, very good positioning as well to be able to find those chances from 5 to 15 yards out and just slot them away. And if you can find a goal-scoring midfielder, like I said, that can be FPL gold dust, as they're often worth more than assists, which you might think someone like a Rodgers is maybe more towards getting. The assists for Watkins worth 3 points every time he gets one of those, whereas Selçuk could be the man to actually put away the goals for West Ham. And I think that's what makes it a very tight call between those two. And if you can afford to wait the one more week, then you could go for him. Or equally, you could end up with both, giving you that extra chance to maybe squeeze in that extra premium to your team if you really like the look of someone like a Palmer that you don't own at the moment, say. And Semenyo at 5.5 million isn't too different. Now, I've got a question mark in the penalties column for him, because to be honest, I don't think we really know with Solanke's departure who is on penalties for Bournemouth. It could be the new forward fella who's looked very good. It could be Semenyo. So we don't know for sure. I think there's a decent chance he is on penalties. But the thing that will be putting a lot of people off Bournemouth at the moment is the fixtures do look a little bit tricky. In Game Week 3, they've got Everton away, though, who have looked one of the worst defences so far. So he's in that boat of players where you could easily start him in game week 3, and then if you could bench him in game week 4 maybe, or game week 5, where they've got Chelsea and Liverpool, then you could do that. But I would definitely not be afraid to start a player at home to Chelsea. I think that's a pretty decent fixture to target at the moment. We saw Wolves get 2 goals against a Chelsea side away from home. It's just in the 2 game weeks time where they're away at Anfield that maybe you'd want to bench. So use your planning tools, assess that. Semenyo could be the option for you if you're looking to just bench in, game week 5, but none of the other game weeks. And he has a good fixture in game week 7, which is something that can't be said for the majority of good-looking FPL options at the moment. Luis Diaz is one where you're not going to see a lot of people talking about him at all, and I think for that reason, well, it'll be because Salah's in a lot of teams, Trent's in a lot of teams, Diogo Jota is in a lot of teams. So the only people who will really be considering Luis Diaz, in my view, the very minute minority of people, is that a word? Is that phrasing? I don't know. The small amount of people who started the season without a Liverpool midfielder, if there are any out there, or maybe even people with just a Jota or just a Trent or just those two who are maybe looking to cover Salah even more. And I am looking at him. I'm very much in the camp of I'm not looking to cover and then that's it. I'm sat with Jota in my team, and I am still considering Luis Diaz as an option. They're away at Old Trafford this week, but then they've got 3 very strong fixtures against Forest, Bournemouth and Wolves. Then they've got Crystal Palace, who have equally looked pretty unimpressive at the start of this season. There could be goals in that one. And we know overall for Liverpool, there are going to be goals in a lot of games and in good quantities as well. The thing with Diaz that we're going to see this season for a lot of the time, I think, is Gakpo and Darwin coming on for Diaz and Jota. And I think that'll be the case for a lot of games. I think there'll be substitutions around that 70-80 minute mark where you're going to see your attackers lose out. But I think the upside that you get from those first 80 minutes is going to be way more comparable to... It's still going to be a lot better than some other teams having 90 minutes. I think Southampton could probably play for 3 days and you'd still get more goals from a Liverpool side within 80 minutes. So I wouldn't let that put you off too much. He's obviously not on penalties, but as we mentioned, they're 3rd in the fixture difficulty ranking, so the fixtures look very good. I think Luis Diaz, if you've got the money and those extra funds, could definitely be one to consider for your team. We've discussed all the other ones, but it's good to have this graphic, I think, where you can compare them all, because otherwise I find the data is a little bit useless and often a little bit out of context, and it took a while to make this. So if you could drop a thumbs up on the video, I think I've already asked once, but I'll beg again to please put a like on the video if you did enjoy. Yeah, screenshot this, use it, whatever. We've discussed, obviously, which one of these guys are the 90-minute men. You've got those. If you can find someone who's green all the way along the line and they're row, then obviously that is the ideal. You've got 3 players on penalties. I think there's a lot of good options here. There's a lot of good picks you could go for. I think it's quite hard to go wrong if you pick an asset from this list. I think you should see FPL points. Some of them will probably flop, but don't come crying to me. Make your own decision, I guess. That's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And if I don't see you before Game Week 3, then hopefully your arrow is green in that one. Thank you very much for tuning in once again. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, stick Phillips down below in the comments so I can see that and leave you a heart on your comment. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.